The program will now begin.
Welcome everyone to this virtual event along with CSW on the international support for Afghan women's rights, protecting and promoting the rights of Afghan women. I'm Melanne Verveer, the director of the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and we're pleased to be here today with our co-host, the Afghan mission to the United Nations and Ambassador Adela Ross, and the permanent mission of the United Kingdom and the United States, all here on behalf of the group of Friends of Women of Afghanistan. 1 year ago, at the United Nations, many of us joined with Afghan Ambassador to the UN, Adela Ross, as well as the group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan. It was a critical moment for Afghan women. Peace negotiations were expected to begin. And at that meeting, Secretary Hillary Clinton called for Afghan women's meaningful participation in the upcoming peace talks. She said women in Afghanistan have come too far to be excluded from the negotiating table. Their voices are critically important. The gains they've made must not be erased, and we must never again allow the Taliban to impose a reign of terror against women and girls. Here we are in this virtual setting 1 year later, at this critical moment. We come together to discuss how can international support be most effective? What more can be done and should be done to ensure Afghan women's safety, meaningful participation at all levels of the peace process, and the upholding of the rights of women guaranteed in the Afghan constitution, to ensure that the progress they have made is preserved and advanced. They have suffered disproportionately in the war, yet they have also been at the forefront of the achievement of hard-won gains and are active in all sectors of Afghan society. How can we also better support the new generation of Afghan leaders who are increasingly taking their place in important positions across the sectors? 63% of Afghans are under the age of 25. In recent months, a wave of assassinations have been targeting Afghan women in government and civil society, journalists, Supreme Court judges, human rights activists, and more. How can the international community work to decrease the violence and protect the women who have been struggling to improve the lives of others as they carry on their brave and critical work? Today, we welcome over 600 attendees to this session, as well as countless more who will be joining us on Facebook from many, many countries, some 70 countries, and many from Afghanistan, whom we welcome from UN missions and from NGOs working both on policy and on the ground in Afghanistan. And now to our first distinguished speaker, Her Excellency Barbara Woodward, the permanent representative of the United Kingdom to the UN. Ambassador Woodward.
Well, thank you very much indeed for those kind remarks and for your own introduction to our conference today. Excellencies, Your Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex, distinguished guests, let me start by thanking our co-hosts today, the group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan and the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security for organising today's event. Let me say, first of all, that the UK is committed to supporting the rights and aspirations of Afghan women. There have been improvements, as we've heard, over the last 20 years, particularly in decreasing maternal mortality and girls' education. For example, girls now make up 39% of children enrolled in school. But challenges remain. Afghanistan is among the lowest in the world for gender equality, ranking 157 out of 162 countries in the UN's Gender Equality Index. almost 29% of girls are married by the age of 18. Violence against women remains widespread, and this has been exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns throughout the country. As we've heard, today we are discussing the Afghan peace process. There is more that needs to be done to protect women's rights, but it's also important to protect the progress so far, which risks being reversed if the peace talks are not inclusive, allowing women to participate fully, equally, and meaningfully. So the UK is committed to supporting women peace builders, including those who carry out their work at great personal risk. The UK has supported the International Civil Society Action Network to develop a protection framework for women peace builders, and I encourage others to adopt the recommendations on how member states can support their protection. We've also partnered with CordAid to work with local civil society organisations and women peace builders across 15 provinces in Afghanistan to ensure they have the training they need to engage in discussions on peace. Last month, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson spoke to President Ghani about the peace process. They agreed on the importance of making progress in the peace talks to secure a sovereign, democratic and united Afghanistan and to preserve the gains made by women and girls. It's a particular pleasure for me to arrive here in New York and discover that Adela and I are co-chairing the Friends of Women of Afghanistan. 20 years ago, when I was in our foreign ministry working on human rights, the cover of our human rights annual report was the women of Afghanistan. So it's a real pleasure to come back to this question here in New York. But for this morning, I look forward to hearing the perspectives of all of our speakers. With her commitment for championing women, peace and security, Her Royal Highness the Countess of Wessex will provide personal reflections. Empowering Afghan women and promoting efforts to protect their rights is essential to a lasting peace in Afghanistan. I'm delighted to be able to join you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Woodward, and for the Permanent Missions co-hosting this event and for all that you are doing in the UK to support this effort. We turn now to Her Excellency Elizabeth Millard, who is the acting ECOSOC Ambassador of the United States to the UN. Ambassador Millard.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you to Ambassador Raz and your delegation, as well as Georgetown University, for organizing this important meeting and hosting us today. The United States is proud to be a member of the group of friends, as well as a co-sponsor of this event. As International Friends of Afghan Women, today we commend their commitment and service at all levels, in communities, provinces, nationally and internationally, to build peace and prosperity for the future of Afghanistan. This year's CSW theme of women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in political and public life and decision-making makes today a perfect occasion to celebrate the strength, resilience, and perseverance of Afghan women. The stakes are higher than ever as Afghans work to end violent conflict and establish a sustainable peace. Sustainable peace depends on Afghan women's full, equal, and meaningful role in promoting and protecting human rights, good governance, and the rule of law. A durable political settlement and the rebuilding of Afghanistan requires women's leadership and decision-making at all levels in politics, the economy, the security sector, and reconstruction efforts. Afghan women continue to step up and speak out, often at great personal risk, for necessary change in all of these spheres. I wanted to take a moment this morning to pay tribute to a group of 7 Afghan women who were assassinated in 2020 while serving their communities during a pivotal moment in Afghanistan's history. We stand in solidarity with the friends and family of Fatima Natasha Khalil, General Sharmila Fro, Mariam Nourzad, Fatima Rajabi, the daughter of Amir Mohammed Freshta, Malalai Maiwand, and Freshta Kohistani. These tragic murders underscore the alarming trend of increased targeting of women in Afghanistan. My country condemns these acts of violence. As we've stated before, any peace agreement must preserve the gains made by women and girls if Afghanistan wants to ensure the international community's continued political and financial support. We stand firm in our support to Afghan women and girls, and we will not waver in this regard. We support the calls of Afghan women for a ceasefire, and we condemn the continued targeted attacks on and threats against women, human rights defenders, civil society activists, peace builders, and journalists. Afghan women carry the pain of the conflict in their everyday lives, and we support their calls for victim and survivor-centered approaches to peace and justice, an important link to the other CSW theme this year of combating sexual and gender-based violence. Women from across Afghanistan have reaffirmed that peace not only means the absence of war, but freedom from all forms of violence, including sexual and gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, as well as respect for gender equality, human rights, governance and rule of law, justice and equality for all. And that's why it's so important that today and every day we continue to spotlight the bravery and resilience of Afghan women and women around the world on the front lines of advancing democracy, human rights, and bringing peace to their countries. As Vice President Harris said in her statement to the Commission earlier this week, we must consider the status of democracy and that the status of women is the status of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Millard. We now will turn to our special guest, Her Excellency Rulagani, the First Lady of Afghanistan.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Your Excellencies, friends, colleagues, my sisters all over the world, Assalamu alaikum, I come to you in peace. This is the 7th year that I have had the privilege of reporting on the state of women in Afghanistan. For those of you who have followed with me the steady ascent of our Afghan sisters, this past year's achievements are remarkable. A year ago, we were celebrating that Afghan women no longer needed others to speak for them. They were capable to speak for themselves. Today, it would be more accurate to say that not only do Afghan women speak for themselves, they also speak for all the nation. The 4 women sitting at the peace negotiating table in Doha are a case in point. Far from being a symbolic presence, they take part in the discussions with the Taliban, contribute to the argumentation, and regularly interact with international observers. Reluctant at first to consider them as worthy interlocutors, the Taliban have slowly come to appreciate their input. Similarly, a large number of women occupying decision-making posts in the government and in government-affiliated organizations have been making great strides in the professional management of their responsibilities. Judges, prosecutors, the head of the Independent Commission for Human Rights, the head of technical education, the Minister for Education, the Minister for Women's Affairs, the head of the Electoral Commission, the head of the Red Crescent, and I could go on and on. Of course, I should also mention Afghan women ambassadors, a striking example being our permanent representative to the United Nations that you all must already know. 4 days ago, I was attending a gathering of women recently appointed as deputy governors in 21 provinces. It was so uplifting to meet with them and to hear their enthusiasm and their aspirations. Some of them I had met before in their earlier role as social activists and development workers. They were bubbling with ideas, and I am looking forward to witness their achievements. But I will always remember the poem that one of them decided to read. Its title was, "I am not afraid of retaliation." These women in their 40s have had to forge ahead throughout their lives, through obstacles and denigration. Though proud to be assuming such a high position at the level of the province, they are doing it with their eyes wide open. They do not expect a honeymoon period, but are bracing themselves to face resistance and sometimes hostility. Because, unfortunately, with success comes retribution. For the past few months, active members of our society, men and women, have become the target of those who oppose a democratic republic in Afghanistan. More than 20 women were assassinated in the past few months. One by one, they were attacked on their way to or from work. Social activists, journalists, doctors, judges, their only apparent guilt being their determination to build a strong democratic and egalitarian society. They will always have a special place in our hearts. Their sacrifice will not be in vain. On the contrary, it makes us more resolute to continue in our journey towards an Afghanistan where all families will enjoy living and prospering, and where children will be able to contemplate a bright future. May God bless our efforts.
Ambassador Raz, I hope you will convey to the First Lady our deep thanks for her being with us today and for her heartfelt and challenging remarks. Thank her very much. We turn now to Her Excellency Eva Maria Limetz, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Estonia. She is the Afghanistan focal point for the Security Council, as Estonia plays that role. Minister Limetz, please.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Excellencies, Honorable First Lady, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to take part in this important event as I am personally deeply committed to protecting and promoting women's rights. Estonia and Afghanistan have had close security and political cooperation for nearly 2 decades. And I am very pleased to note that these decades have seen important steps forward, including with respect to the rights of women and girls. We have seen progress with regard to women's access to education, in their political participation and their increasing role in the economy. Moreover, strong women leaders and active civil society prove that human rights are deeply embedded in the current Afghan society and serve as an inspiration for positive change. Achieving lasting peace in Afghanistan is one of our priorities in the UN Security Council. As co-pen holders, Estonia continues to support an inclusive Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process that preserves the political, economic, and social achievements of the Afghan people since 2001. It is unfortunate how badly women and children suffer from the conflict, as we just heard from the Honorable First Lady. In 2020, they represented 43% of all civilian casualties. Women and children also continue to be targets of conflict-related sexual violence, and including rape. We also know that the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately affected women and girls, as it is in many other countries in the world. The UN Security Council and the international community have sent a clear and unified message. Constitutional protection of the rights of women and girls needs to be preserved. Human rights and fundamental freedoms must be protected and promoted during the peace negotiations, as well as in the subsequent agreement and during its implementation. The process itself must be inclusive, with women's full, equal and meaningful participation guaranteed in all stages. A diverse civil society remains a key, and the UN assistance mission in Afghanistan has an important role in supporting these efforts. The message of women's participation was echoed also in the Geneva Pledging Conference, where the EU member states as well as the wider international community affirmed its support to Afghanistan and stressed the need to keep the gains of the past years as a firm precondition to our continuous support. Gender-based violence continued again. Attacks against women, human rights defenders, peace builders, journalists, and media workers are extremely disturbing and has to stop immediately. These attacks undermine not only the peace process, but also the democratic progress of society. This is why recently the Security Council condemned in the strongest terms all the alarming number of attacks deliberately targeting civilians in Afghanistan. I reiterate this call for an immediate end of these attacks and stress the urgent and imperative need to ensure accountability. To conclude, Afghanistan has been one of our priority partner countries on development cooperation since 2006. Currently, for example, Mondo, one of the leading development cooperation NGOs in Estonia, supported also by our government, is working in northern and eastern part of Afghanistan. The aim of their project is to improve women's reproductive health, access to childbirth assistance, and also to improve education of girls. Our security and development cooperation experience from Afghanistan also provided very important insights into the development of Estonia's first National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security in 2010. I was personally involved in this process and I remember very well these efforts that we made here. So I want to one more confirm that Estonia will continue to support in cooperation with all stakeholders the full enjoyment of all human rights by all Afghan women and girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your compelling remarks and for being here with us today. We're going to turn now to His Excellency Odin Halvorsen, who is the State Secretary to the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Norway is also an Afghanistan focal point for the Security Council. Secretary Halvorsen, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would first like to thank the organizers of today's very timely discussion and also the previous speakers for their very valuable insights. The intra-Afghan negotiations represent a historic opportunity for peace. And in order to be sustainable, a peace agreement needs to have human rights, gender equality, and rule of law at its very core. It will be important to uphold and expand on the important progress made to date. Experience also shows that the likelihood of lasting peace is significantly enhanced with the meaningful participation of women in all aspects of negotiations and peace building. However, since the beginning of the intra-Afghan peace negotiations last September, we have seen a concerning development in the number of attacks targeting civilians, killing, injuring, and threatening the voices of those who want to influence the future of Afghanistan. The attacks have targeted human rights defenders, journalists, media workers, judges, prosecutors, religious scholars, healthcare workers, political analysts, civil servants, and other civilians, many of whom have been women, as the First Lady and Ambassador Millard so clearly pointed out. These killings have a chilling impact on civil society and undermine the prospects for peace. They generate a climate of fear among the population, intimidate individuals and organizations from freely assembling and from expressing their views and grievances at a time where active public discourse is deeply needed. The killings contribute to a diminishing public confidence and hope in efforts towards peace. Since January, Norway has been an elected member of the UN Security Council. And together with Estonia, we have taken on the responsibility of being co-pen holders on the Afghan file in the Council. This means we have added opportunity and responsibility to further the Council's work related to Afghanistan. And as co-pen holders, we last week facilitated the Council press statement condemning the targeted killings and emphasizing the importance of an inclusive peace process. And I also want to thank the other Council members for their cooperation in achieving this important consensus. The participation of women in the peace process is critical to achieve a durable peace and to build a future for Afghanistan where the developments of the past 20 years are sustained. On the 8th of March, I had the opportunity to discuss the progress of the Afghan peace talks with some of the women negotiators in the Republic's delegation. They are effective negotiators in their fields of expertise. They are strong leaders who play an important role in advancing equal opportunities for women and for building a better future for Afghanistan. A key takeaway from this conversation was that more work remains to create the necessary space for women leaders and experts at all levels in Afghanistan's peace process. A key takeaway: Afghan women have made great strides through the continuous efforts and sacrifices over the last 20 years, but they still face serious challenges and are in a vulnerable position. Afghan women have always been at the vanguard of promoting peace and understanding, from the grassroots level up to the government. We recognize in particular the dedicated efforts of the First Lady Rulagani and value our strong cooperation with her. As friends and international partners of Afghanistan, we must be vocal and remain steadfast in our support for Afghan women as they fight for their rightful place at the negotiating table and in every room where the decisions about the future of Afghanistan are made. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Halvorsen, and for Norway's longstanding support for women in Afghanistan. We're now going to move to the next portion of our discussion, specifically on some of the specific actions we may take. And I'd like to begin with Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex, a steadfast champion for the women, peace, and security agenda, and particularly to protect women against sexual violence and conflict. Your Highness, as we have just heard from our opening speakers, and as we will continue to hear from our distinguished participants going forward here, there are urgent actions that the international community must take to protect Afghan women's rights and to ensure an inclusive, durable peace process going forward. Perhaps you can help us by stepping back a moment to reflect on why we are having this discussion today. Why are you so committed to the women, peace, and security agenda as a champion for your country on this issue? And what is the importance of women's participation and protection in the peace processes? Why is this such an important moment in Afghanistan today? And how do we protect women from the violence that we have been hearing about through our opening speakers' remarks? Your Highness, it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you, Milan, and to all my sisters in Afghanistan and elsewhere. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for today. Some big questions there. I'm afraid I don't have the magic wand, but I think as the First Lady, Mrs. Ghani, illustrated so well, women in Afghanistan have made such huge strides forwards. And we know they've always been effective, but for so many years were kept in the shadows and have actually started to make an impact on the country. So it's in our vested interests to help support them and to keep them in these positions and to keep improving their situations. I mean, the question of why am I so committed to helping to champion this kind of work is, why wouldn't you be when half the population are women and they are so effective in getting things done. What we know is that when a peace process is enacted, often it goes down to the community level, and it is at the community level that the women are actually doing the work. They are the ones that are actually making things happen. So you ask yourself, why would you not have them at the table to help shape what that peace looks like? You know, it's they're at the front line the entire time, whether it be you know, creating and moving communities forward, or whether these amazing women who are actually putting themselves into the room and actually being part of the peace process. Well, we're at a critical moment right now, and I really hope and pray that they are going to continue to have an effect and are actually going to continue to be part of this process. We also have an important question to ask, and it's permanently the question that's sort of the elephant in the room. And it's, why are men so afraid of having women in the room? Because again, they are the women who people are going to actually enact that peace. So I hope by the example that women have shown in Afghanistan in recent times, that they are really good at what they're doing. They're so effective, that actually by that influence, that they will retain a foothold. And it really falls onto the international community to do as much as we possibly can to assist them and to protect them. And recently the UK funded the Women Peace Builders Protection Framework. And I really, I echo Elizabeth Millard's voice when I say, you know, I really hope that other countries will take up that baton, because we have seen, as Mrs. Ghani said to us, you know, we've seen some terrible violence taking place, and we have to ensure that the protection of women who put themselves at the front line, that they are well protected. So I don't have, sadly, all the answers, but what I do have is the ability to say, look, let's keep going. We have a duty towards helping them. We have to listen as well. I think it's so important to listen to the women of Afghanistan, to say, what is it that you need? What does the international community need to do more of in order to help support those processes and to make things effective and to move forwards? For me, this is every encounter, every involvement, particularly with organizations such as yours, Milan. You know, I learn more and more, and I think we all do. And every day is a learning day for all of us. And that is why we have to be so open-minded and agile in the way that we are. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this discussion today. I look forward to hearing more from the speakers that are coming. But I just would say and encourage all of the people on our call today to keep doing what we can to support this process, because it's so important.
Well, thank you so much, Your Highness, and for your deep personal commitment to this issue. And you're right. None of us has all of the answers, but we have to keep going, and I'm sure we will. Let's turn now to Her Excellency Rosemary DiCarlo, the UN Undersecretary General for Political Affairs. A truly heavy burden and important role that Ambassador DiCarlo plays in advising the Secretary General on peace and security issues globally. Ambassador DiCarlo, it's so wonderful to have you with us. There have been renewed calls in recent weeks for greater engagement on the part of the United Nations on Afghanistan and in helping to strengthen the peace process, to engage in robust regional diplomacy, and to prepare the groundwork for a peace agreement. There have been these evolving developments, and hopefully you can tell us where the UN is today on this issue, and perhaps also how the UN's framework on women, peace, and security that so many of us are working to translate into real actions every day, how that translates into the UN operations in Afghanistan. So Ambassador DiCarlo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Revere. Let me just start out by saying that the United Nations has been on the ground in Afghanistan since 1949. We've provided good offices. We've accompanied Afghanistan through elections, security transitions. Today, our mission, excuse me, the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, or UNAMA, remains the largest special political mission the UN has deployed. UNAMA today is providing technical advice to political actors on inclusive mediation, providing and sharing lessons from other peace processes. But we're providing this advice not only to the political actors, but also to civil society groups to ensure that they're informed and ready to engage. The main track of negotiations is in Doha, and my colleagues from UNAMA are a steady presence on the ground in Doha, outside the room, outside the negotiating room, but close to the parties. And our special representative, Deborah Lyons, who heads UNAMA, has made frequent visits to Doha to support these negotiations. Now, on the ground in Afghanistan, we're also working and engaged on local peace initiatives. Now, we know that local initiatives do not necessarily translate into national peace agreements, but they do foster dialogue, and that will be assets when national processes do take shape. We also believe that strengthening the peace process has a very important regional dimension. Afghanistan's neighbors have a stake in the stability and security and prosperity of the region. After all, it will affect them if Afghanistan is not stable and secure. For that reason, the Secretary General has appointed a personal envoy just this week, Jean Arnaud, known to many of you. He will be conferring with regional countries, helping to support efforts to create an enabling environment for negotiations, including reduction of violence. Jean's going to work very closely with Deborah to ensure that the UN provides the utmost support to promote a sustainable peace in Afghanistan. Now, as far as engaging women, we've been promoting women's participation in civic and political processes for a long time. We've built a lot of relationships and partnerships with women peace builders throughout the country. We've been backing platforms, for example, such as radio, television, and social media that facilitate an exchange on the peace process and support the meaningful inclusion of women, explaining why women need to be included. Just over the past 3 months, we've backed door-to-door consultations on the peace process with over 1,500 women who otherwise would have had limited access to civic affairs. We've facilitated discussions between women religious scholars and community representatives on women's rights and political participation. In 2019, it was in July of 2019, I joined the UN Deputy Secretary General's delegation to Afghanistan. She brought a group of senior UN women to meet with women representatives to show support and encourage them in their participation in a peace process. We saw firsthand how eager women were to engage in the peace process, how much they were ready to do so, and ready to lead. I think all of us are concerned that we could lose some very hard-fought gains over the last 20, that were made over the last 20 years. Frankly, we are disappointed that far too few women have participated as delegates in Doha. We firmly believe we must do more to encourage their participation. As far as the UN is concerned, it is not just through advocacy. We will continue to provide training programs, share advice, and support these women as best we can over the next few months in order to so that they can be included and truly make a difference, not only in the peace process, but in any future political structure in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for reminding us of the longstanding role of the UN in Afghanistan, what it is currently doing, certainly the extraordinary work of Special Rep Lyons, as well as the appointment now of Mr. Arnault. So thank you to Ambassador DiCarlo for all that you do on this issue and so many others. We're going to turn now to Afghanistan, to Mary Akrami in Kabul. She is the executive director of the Afghan Women's Network and former executive director of the Afghan Women's Skills Development Center. She helped establish the first ever shelter for women at risk of violence in Afghanistan in 2003, and she represented her country in the 2001 Bonn Conference for Civil Society. So Madi, the Afghan Women's Network operates all across Afghanistan and has been playing a vital leadership role to advance the peace in the midst of an extraordinary crisis. And you and your colleagues uniquely understand what's at stake for Afghan women. You also recently released a letter outlining your position on the US peace proposal that was set out about a week ago. Can you tell us about your views on that and what you think from the perspective of everyday life on the ground that the international community could be doing to support Afghan women at this critical moment? Mari?
Thank you so much, dear Ambassador. Good morning and good evening for all friends.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I'm so sorry for.
Yeah, a little bit. Can you be louder?
Yeah, thank you for having me in this important and timely event. Before I share my views on the US proposal for a political settlement, I would like to take a few seconds and honor our sisters who were killed by the Taliban. They were the breadwinner of their families, working to make life better for their children and families. They were not criminal. They were women, professional women. Afghan women have paid a heavy price during the 4 decades of war, and now they are forced to pay the price for a political peace that they are not a part of it. We are expected to give up our dreams and submit to the policies that are designed to limit our rights and freedom. We are often asked, what are you women willing to sacrifice for peace? Peace doesn't come free. I find such comments deeply disturbing and ignoring. What do we have to give up? The right to education, the right to employment, the right to have control over my body, the right to have access to healthcare, the right to be treated as an equal human being? Well, Afghan women were forced to give up all of these 25 years ago. We were reduced to live with no rights and no dignity. In 1996, when the Taliban took control of my country, they said restrictions on girls and women were temporary. We trusted them. But their discrimination against women continued to the end of their regime, not again. Now is the time to show in action your commitment for the meaningful participation and inclusion of women in the peace process. We cannot trust the Taliban and we cannot trust our politicians. This is why we want our constitutional rights to be protected in any agreement drafted by Afghans, by Americans and others. We have been victimized in the name of Islam for way too long. I'm a proud Muslim, but the Taliban interpretation of Islam is not acceptable, not to me, and not to the millions of other Muslims inside and outside of Afghanistan. Afghanistan needs governance systems that are responsive to the needs and concerns of its citizens. In the 21st century, we want the protection of women's social, political, cultural, and economic rights. We do not want to be discriminated against because of our gender. My message to the international community is do not be a silent observer. Use your leverage. With all sides, do not another costly mistakes happen under your watch. You are more than half of our society. We deserve to heard, included, and respected. Take the Afghan government and the international community, and the Taliban accountable for their discriminatory policies and action against women. Consider and implemented the UN Resolution 1325 in all your policies and decisions. A lot has been said about how important it is to include women in peace process. Today is the time to stand with women of Afghanistan as we are at the front line, fight for our rights and struggle for our rights. Do not forget us again. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mari, and thank you for all that you are continuing to do under great stress. We're going to go now to His Excellency Andreas von Brandt, who is the ambassador of the European Union in Afghanistan. Mr. Ambassador. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Well, I will come back. I'll go to back to Afghanistan and come back to you since we can't hear. We'll turn now to and hope to work out that technical difficulty. We'll turn now to Shkula Sadran, who is the Afghan youth representative to the United Nations, where she engages young Afghans to share ideas about promoting peace, security, and positive change in Afghanistan, and representing her peers and their vast numbers at international events, including the Security Council. Shkula, there's often little recognition of just how young Afghanistan's population is and the demographic changes that are occurring in the country and have occurred over the last 20 years. Your generation has grown up in a different country post-2001. Give us a sense of what you and your generation want for Afghanistan. What are your red lines and how are you contributing to society today? Shkula, please.
Thank you very much. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for me. Please accept my respectful greetings. Being as Afghan youth representative, it has given me the opportunity to interact with young generation and to discuss with them the current situations, our fears, our demands, and our concerns. And this platform, being Afghan youth representative, has helped me to realize that Afghan young generation holds a strong and a common mentality about the current situation. It has helped me to realize that all of us shares common interests and common concerns. So I have realized that Afghan generation want an independent and peaceful Afghanistan where we are economically and politically strong enough to compete with our regional states and neighbors. Meanwhile, we want an Afghanistan where women's rights are protected, where we have the choice and liberty to choose our destiny and to shape our destiny. shape our destiny and to use our voice for our desires and concerns. Meanwhile, we want Afghanistan where the freedom of speech is protected and preserved. Anything that damage our national interests and our liberties and our rights is not acceptable for us. I believe that we, as Afghan young generation, has lost a lot in the past 2 decades war, and to this point, we have made lots of sacrifices, and we do not want to compromise anything in this peace process. We want the international community and the government to protect our achievements. When we talk about achievements, we should keep in mind that Afghan youth and specifically Afghan women have contributed a lot to all sectors and sides of society. They have contributed to military, economic, education, sports, and arts. We recently see that the Afghan young generation, prominent young activists and prominent Afghan women rights activists are being targeted, which is a sign that terrorists are in a fear and they are afraid of Afghan young generation. So I believe that the international community should, in this critical era of time, international community should stand behind us, because they also have contributed in the past 2 decades, and we recognize and we appreciate their contributions. So I believe that international community, UN, should come together and stand with us in order to ensure the rule of law, enforcement of law, and in order to ensure that we are not going to be victims of a political settlement under the name of peace negotiations or peace deals. As my dear colleague, my fellow colleague, Mrs. Mari Akrami mentioned, that we do not trust Taliban, we do not trust their plans and their mentality. We believe that they still hold the same mentality, and even they are more dangerous than previous than past years. So we need that ensurement. We need that ensurement from international community, because if Afghanistan fell in once again in a war, in a civil war, this will be very critical and very dangerous, not only for the region, but for the entire world. This is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shkula. And now, hopefully, Ambassador von Brandt's technology has been worked through, and you can tell us, sir, what is the EU's position on the current peace process in Afghanistan? And as these discussions are still in flux, what more can be done to strengthen and advance the process and ensure that it achieves an inclusive and durable peace outcome? Ambassador, please. It's not working. Well, maybe someone can figure it out or give us your remarks and we will post them so that everybody can know about the EU's position. We're so sorry we can't hear you. So it goes. We're going to now turn to interventions from the member states, beginning with Her Excellency Ambassador Geraldine Byrne-Nason, the permanent representative of Ireland to the United Nations. Always good to see you, Madam Ambassador.
Thank you very much indeed, dear Ambassador Milan. Great to see you too. And a big thank you to all the conveners of this morning's really important event. Ireland is really proud to be a member of the group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan, and we work very closely with Adela and Barbara here in New York, making sure the light keeps shining on these important issues. My message, Milan, this morning would be really short and simple. We simply have to keep up the pressure on behalf of the women of Afghanistan if we are to deliver on the promises we have made as an international community and as the UN. I want to thank our really excellent speakers this morning, particularly because our discussions have been frank, and I have to say some of the statements unforgiving. That's exactly what we need to hear right now. Please keep saying that. Ireland certainly will amplify your voice whenever and wherever we can. And in particular, as a newly elected member of the UN Security Council, we plan to keep this issue absolutely front and center in our discussions on peace and security. We co-chair the group of the Council on Women, Peace and Security, so you can depend on us being there for you. The occasion of the CSW, as we know, is usually one of joy and some celebration, but I also believe, frankly, it's a time for clear-eyed assessment about the work that's actually needed to advance women's rights globally, and where more are needed now than to look at Afghanistan. We've all seen and heard this morning about the shocking levels of targeted violence endured by women, from human rights defenders to journalists, judges to doctors. It's a product of systematic oppression of women, gender inequality, and a lack of respect for human rights. As the peace talks continue, and I fully agree with Rosemary DiCarlo's important point on this, we wanted to see more women in Doha. Now we're calling for the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women in formal and informal peace talks as these discussions continue, Doha and onwards. And certainly we want to see women taking their place at the table afterwards. On International Women's Day here just 2 weeks ago, Ireland hosted an informal meeting of the Security Council, an ARIA meeting, where we reflected with members of the UN about how the UN can itself and be held to account, but also hold others to account in ensuring women participate in peace talks. And I have to say that Adela's contribution to that meeting stayed with me, a simple and straightforward message again that said peace will fail if women's rights are not guaranteed. I can do no better than echo that in conclusion. And Milan, just to say to you that this is not the time for us to let Afghan women down. Thank you very much.
You're so right, Madam Ambassador. Thank you very much. We'll turn now to Her Excellency Ambassador Askoltan Atayeva from the Permanent Mission of Turkmenistan to the UN. Ambassador Atayeva?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the Permanent Mission of Afghanistan to the Afghanistan, the United Kingdom, and the United States on behalf of the group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan with the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security for convening today's important side event. Excellencies, at the International Women's Day, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres declared that 21st century should become the century of women's equality. He has affirmed the gender equality is the issue of power. Women's participation is critical to the success of all efforts to build sustainable peace. It is not only about the realization of women's rights, but also about building peaceful societies. There is sufficient evidence that establishing the peace process are more likely to succeed when women are fully engaged. In this context, Turkmenistan fully supports enhancing international efforts for supporting Afghan women's rights, protecting and promoting the rights of Afghan women at the all level and in the coherent and results-oriented way in the past 2 decades. Afghan women are increasingly being appointed to high position. As an example, my very good friend, sister and colleague, the permanent representative of Afghanistan to the United Nations, Ambassador Adela Ras. Turkmenistan strongly believes that the education of women and girls, especially in rural areas, should be provided as a key to the true progress on the women's improvement to bring about social transformation. It is our principal position that Afghanistan should not be viewed as a source of challenges, but as one of opportunities based on its economic integration into Central Asia and through its connectivity and investments in regional infrastructure, trade and transit transportation projects. At a country rich in human capital, women must be achieved in these processes, and we are privileged to be able to help. We encourage and appeal to donor countries to allocate more scholarship for women and girls from conflict-affected countries. Turkmenistan actively develops partnership with Afghanistan on the wide range. Many Afghan students are studying in Turkmenistan institutes on higher education, while those who already completed their studies work in various states, entities in Afghanistan, thus making an input into the development of their country. The government of Turkmenistan renders assistance of humanitarian scope to the fraternal country, including the construction of number of social facilities. The government of Turkmenistan has built a school in Balkh province, health center in the province of Faryab, and maternity hospital in Herat province. Most recently, on January 14, 2021, the President of Turkmenistan and President of Islamic Republic of Afghanistan launched new infrastructure facilities via a teleconference that brought together participants from both countries. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that in Afghanistan, like in any other country, lasting peace and stability can be achieved only if women's voice are both heard and considered. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Ambassador. And we will now move to Her Excellency Ambassador Karen von Blierberg, who is the Deputy Permanent Representative of Belgium to the United Nations.
Thank you so
Ambassador.
much. Thank you so much, Ambassador Verveer. We thank the missions of Afghanistan, UK, and US, together, of course, with the Georgetown Institute, for organizing this interactive discussion, and a special thank you to the First Lady of Afghanistan and Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex, for their very inspiring opening remarks. Belgium shares a vision of the many speakers and the government of Afghanistan more broadly to build on the gains of the past 2 decades. We need to promote and protect women's rights and achieve an inclusive and sustainable peace. Belgium supported the vision in the latest UN Security Council and General Assembly resolutions. We share the concerns expressed by the Security Council at the targeted killings of, among others, women's rights activists in Afghanistan. There can be no impunity for the perpetrators. The conflict in Afghanistan is the world's deadliest for children. We are deeply concerned at the scale and severity of grave violations of children's rights in Afghanistan. Protecting girls and boys should be at the center of our attention. We urge all parties to swiftly implement the recommendations agreed by the Working Group on Children and Armed Conflict. From our side, Belgium is supporting the implementation of the National Action Plan for the Resolution 3025 together with UN Women. Through the EU, we are working to prevent and end violence against women in Afghanistan through the Joint Spotlight Initiative with the UN. The EU has clearly stated that any future support will be conditional upon the continued commitment of Afghanistan to promoting and protecting the rights of women. We hope the next months will see a breakthrough in the peace talks. Full and meaningful participation of women in these talks is for Belgium essential. Let there be no doubt as to where Belgium stands, firmly on the side of the women of Afghanistan. Thank you so much, Ambassador Verveer.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Is the ambassador, the deputy perm rep of Germany with us? I don't see him. Well, let us go now to, is the deputy perm rep of Turkey with us? Okay, we will turn to you, Your Excellency, Bilge Koshayet, the deputy perm representative of Turkey. Thank you so much for being here. Please.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and special thanks, of course, to the co-hosters of this meeting this morning. It's very timely and we appreciate it. I just briefly wanted to join others who spoke before me to emphasize our strong support, Turkey's strong support to women and girls in Afghanistan. We are committed to the protection of women's rights, and we commend their resilience and perseverance in their work for the future of their country. And we commend the targeted violence against women, which is unacceptable. And we stand in solidarity with those brave women and girls in the country who lost their lives merely for wanting to have better education, merely for exercising their professions, which many of us in other parts of the world take for granted. So just wanted to add my voice for supporting the cause of Afghan women. We are, of course, ready to our part in the platforms that we are active in terms of the intra-Afghan negotiations and Afghan peace process, so that the women have their meaningful place in the negotiating table, as well as making their voices heard in terms of their rights, and then the achievements that they have made over the past decades are not rolled back. As we have said in other platforms, we do not think that the peace in Afghanistan should be at any cost, because we believe that peace gained at the price of women's rights is not peace. So we will be actively supporting women's rights and being in cooperation with other colleagues inside this group of friends, so that women are included in the negotiating table and they are represented for the future of their country. Thank you so much for this meeting.
Thank you for your remarks. Is the representative of the French mission with us? Ms. Dimlabe?
Yes, she's here. Good morning to everyone, and thank you. In the optimism around the peace talk, it is imperative that women are not sidelined or excluded. And though limited, women have a seat in Doha, even if only on one side on a table. And we must encourage them to have a full participation. Peace will not be sustainable without women's full, equal, and meaningful participation. We cannot and should not accept the fallacy that women are absent because of insufficient adequate profile. We've heard progress from the talk in Doha. At the same time, and as emphasized by Mrs. Rani and others, we have seen rising and deliberate attacks against courageous women that participate in Afghan democracy and reconstruction. Media's workers and judges are targeting, among others. Those responsible for these attacks must be made accountable. This is not only attacks against individuals, but again, attacks against the stability and future of Afghanistan. Women are still paying the highest price in violence attacks. They are among the first civilian casualty and suffer from targeted violence. To fight for their protection is a priority because a safe environment is the first condition for the full enjoyment of human rights. Without safety, there can be no meaningful participation in the public sphere. They have also suffered the most from the pandemic impact in Afghanistan, suffering from job losses, increased care burden, sexual-based violence, and rising domestic violence. And as we have seen in the last report from UNAMA and OHCHR, the justice system has been failing to help those women. Let me conclude by reaffirming that the last peace requires the safeguarding of human rights, and especially women's rights. They are the major achievement of the last 20 years. They are the war bounty of the Afghan people after decades of continuing bloodshed. There can be no turning back, even as the pace of peace is fastening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Dalabe. And now we are going to go to Her Excellency Mia Ryan, who is the Deputy Perm Rep of Finland.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies, Your Royal Highness, dear colleagues. I am so pleased to join this event today. Excellent interventions. Thank you so much. A few brief remarks from our side. First, we have been discussing women's rights today, and we need to continue doing that. It is also important that this topic was so high on the agenda on the 2020 Afghanistan conference that Finland had the pleasure of co-hosting with the government of Afghanistan and UNAMA. As we know, through joint effort, we managed together to secure a strong support and a significant amount of funding pledges for the development of Afghanistan. We also agreed on key principles and terms for the collaboration between the Afghan government and international development partners. Very importantly, related to today's topic, the 4-year partnership framework states that human rights, including the rights of women, children, and minorities, must be respected, protected, and promoted. Adherence to these principles will be assessed on a continuous basis and through an agreed mechanism. Second, the promotion of women's rights and gender equality are key elements also in our bilateral partnership with Afghanistan, and we wish to build on the important progress made by the people and by the government of Afghanistan within the past 2 decades. Women are willing and able to participate in all walks of life. It is also their right. One long-term priority, which is now probably more important than ever, is the support for the implementation of the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security in Afghanistan. We provide funding for this work through UN Women and by supporting Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission. I actually have a personal memory of this topic that goes back a decade when the Afghan colleagues started to draft their first 1325 action plan. I had the pleasure of being part of the team from Finland that shared our experiences of the same process. And from those discussions in various ministries in Kabul, I remember well the incredible determination of our Afghan colleagues. And I'm confident that the same commitment is there now. And with the able leadership of the Afghan government, it is possible to put in practice the action plan also in the provinces and at the local level across the country. I stop here. Thank you again for all the ideas and lessons on how to move towards a prosperous, peaceful, and just society also for women. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now to the representative of Germany for your remarks, sir. Yes, please, Mr. Schroeder.
Yes, thank you very much. And I thank you, the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, for the invitation. When the Group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan was created in November 2019, we gladly joined as international support for Afghan women's rights as a core issue for Germany. As a close friend of Afghanistan for more than a century, we have firmly committed ourselves. I'm especially glad that Shkula Sadran has joined us today and spoken to us today. As the Afghan youth representative to the UN, she represents both the women of the country as well as the young generation, which constitutes the broad majority of the Afghan people. Her remarks were spot on and showed exactly where the problems and challenges lie today. Just like at the Security Council chamber in December last year, Shkula pointed to the pertinent issues at hand. Women and young people suffer most under the current violence and especially the targeted assassinations. Just a little more than 2 weeks ago, in the city of Jalalabad, journalists Mursal Wahidi, Sadia Sadat, and Shahnaz Raoufi of the Anika television station were shot dead. A few days later, a female gynecologist Dr. Sadaf Elias, was killed in another attack. And unfortunately, it doesn't end there. The senseless killing continues. Women are deliberately targeted to strike fear in people's hearts. Afghan women have organized decades ago and ever since had to struggle with so many attempts to silence their voices. As Afghan women today again face the threat of losing, it is high time to speak out for them, to come together and support them so that they can actively and effectively participate in all peace processes. While there has been substantive progress for Afghan women over the last 2 decades, this largely still applies to women in urban settings who have greater opportunities today. Many women in rural or remote areas, however, still suffer from discrimination, violence, and marginalization. We must not allow women to be forced back into the situation before 2001. Therefore, any peace process has to reflect the needs and concerns of women in all areas of the country. Today, more than ever, women play a vital role as proactive agents of change. We cannot overstate their importance for national governments and international organizations. So it is for us to provide them with the necessary means to consolidate their importance, role, and participation in all spheres of society and government. Germany stands ready to do so. Any so-called quick fixes in the Afghan peace process gravely endanger that women
I guess we have. Do we have you back? I think we lost the end of that, but we're so grateful to have the representative from Germany with us today, as Germany has played a vital role on this issue. We're going to turn now to the woman who has brought us together and who plays a very important role every day at the United Nations representing Afghanistan, Her Excellency Adela Raz. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. The floor is yours, and give us our marching orders going forward.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, let me express my gratitude to Her Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Estonia, His Excellency, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Norway, as the two co-pen holders of Afghanistan at the Council, as well as Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex, USG De Carlo, for your steadfast support here to all women across the world at the UN, at the very important pillar of the United Nations at the political work. My fellow co-chair of the group of friends, Ambassador Whitworth, who is an excellent and a strong voice, additional voice here at the United Nations, and we're so pleased to have her. Ambassador Miller, for your very strong supportive statement today here in the meeting. My fellow Afghan sisters, Ms. Akrami and Ms. Zadran, you came with passion, with dedication. Your statements were emotional and real and true, and it touched the hearts of all of us. And of course, Ambassador Vivier, for your long-term support to the women of Afghanistan. Let me thank you all for your principled support for the women of Afghanistan, for our rights and inspiration. While our situation often feels difficult today, but I'm also energized and optimistic because the women of Afghanistan today are empowered, united, and unified, and they will not accept any outcome of the peace that doesn't protect their rights and the gains of Afghan women, as well as the steadfast support of the international community from the friends and allies of Afghan women. That's you all. A special thanks to the Permanent Mission of the United Kingdom in the United States for co-hosting today's event with us on behalf of the group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan. This is a strong group. You are our allies. You are the backbone of us here at the United Nations, and I'm extremely grateful. I also extend my sincere gratitude to all our speakers for lending us their time, knowledge, and support, especially for highlighting the international community's unwavering support for Afghan women's rights and their unrelenting commitment to promoting it, the absolute need for an inclusive peace process and the protection of women's rights in the peace agreement. And of course, to the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security for being with us today to co-host the event, and Ambassador Bover for leading and moderating the discussion so lively and engaging, and I'm extremely grateful to you. The distinguished Foreign Minister of Estonia and the Deputy Minister of Norway reaffirmed the dedication of the UN Security Council in promoting women's rights in Afghanistan. The Council's support will be vital in the months ahead, and Estonia and Norway's commitment in ensuring the protection of women's rights gave us confidence that Afghan women can count on the Council. The remarks by Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex, revealed the universal importance of protecting and promoting women's rights and listening to Afghan women in the powerful moral argument for maintaining our past gains. The discussion with USG DeCarlo revealed the broad support for Afghan women that they have in the international community and provided a powerful example of how the international community can best protect and promote our rights. USG DeCarlo explained the UN's role in supporting grassroots movement and women's role in local and national peace initiatives. Afghanistan looks forward to further strengthening our cooperation with the United Nations, as well as our other partners and allies to achieve our shared vision for our country's future. Ms. Akrami and Ms. Zedron, strong accounts from the ground. They clearly articulated the importance of our current moment in the history and the necessity of a strong regional and international consensus for the protection of Afghan women's rights. Ms. Akrami clearly stated that we cannot go back 25 years in the time when Afghan women were robbed of all their rights. And I must tell you, she is one of the strongest women leader we have. She had a stroke earlier, a few days ago, but she is here with us today to still present what is so important for women in my country. Ms. Zedron spoke from the call from Afghan youth for a society in which women's rights are protected. Young people can shape their own destiny and their right to free speech is protected. Their participation in today's meeting indicated that the future holds for Afghanistan and our potential when our young women are allowed to be educated and speak freely. And she is a great example what we have achieved in the last 20 years. Lastly, the statement by the members of the group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan showed widespread support from the member states at the United Nations. They reassured us that Afghan women have a diverse set of supporters in the international community. You're our sisters and you are our strong pillar of support at the UN. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to end by clearly stating that there is no future peace in Afghanistan without the constitutional protection and active promotion of women's rights. The international community will not accept it. That's what you all said, as well as the government of Afghanistan will not accept it. And I speak on behalf of the government. And most importantly, the people of Afghanistan will not accept it. And that's the younger generation, that's women, and 75% of the population. The government of Afghanistan looks forward to work closely with the international community to further protect and promote the rights of Afghan women in accordance with the international best practices and the lessons learned from today's discussion. We are truly in a monumental and a critical time in our history. We are here united and unified together to make sure that the future of Afghanistan holds a future and brings a peace that's sustainable, that is accepted, that's implementable, and that protects the gain of our last 20 years. And as some of you may say, even advances the gains of the last 20 years. Together we can achieve both gender equality and peace in Afghanistan. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your very genuine and your very strong commitment at this time that we truly look up all to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Raz, and thanks to each and every one of you for your leadership and commitment, and to our audience, the hundreds of you across the world who have joined us today. We are united in a common cause. And I want to especially say to Madi and to Shkula that we stand with you and your sisters in the days ahead as we have. So thanks again to each and every one of you. The event recording and key recommendations will be available on the Georgetown website, and the site is in the chat box for your convenience. So thank you again, ever onward, a lot of work ahead. Bye, everyone. Thank you.